Good morning, everyone. I'd like to invite you to take a seat. We're going to start our meeting very soon. Good morning, all. I'd like to welcome you to the Toronto East York Community Council meeting. We are meeting number 32 as of today. The chair and members of Toronto East York Community Council gratefully acknowledge that our committee is meeting on the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nations, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat. Toronto remains home to many Indigenous communities, and we are grateful to be here. We will begin our Are there any declarations? I will call for declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Seeing none. Can I please have a mover to confirm the minutes of April the 4th, 2018? That's Councillor Fragedakis. Thank you. For those members of the public who are here to speak to any matters on the agenda, I ask that you can identify yourself to the clerk and they will update you on our speakers list, and I will call you when your item is before us. We will begin our meeting today on page number 73 of the goldenrod sheets, starting with TE 32.39, appointments to Business Improvement Area Boards of Management, affecting many wards. Yes. Councillor Cressy.
Speaker, I have an amendment on that.
Okay,
which clerks have. If clerks can put it on the screen. This is simply to include the Bloor Annex BIA appointments. This was, otherwise we're going to have to wait till next month, and they've already suggested these. Okay, thank you very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? Item as amended. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.40, 27 to 37 Yorkville Avenue and 26 to 32 and 50 Cumberland Street, Public Art Plan. I would like to move the recommendations in the staff report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.41, designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880, fire routes 2 Strawn Avenue, 111 Princess Boulevard. Ward 19. He's not here. Yes. We're just on, Councillor, I'll just let you know where it's a technical item, designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880, fire routes 2 Strawn, Princess Boulevard.
I'll move the staff recommendations.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.2, designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880, fire routes 207 Queens Quay West, Ward 20.
I'm going to move the staff recommendations.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.43, 19 Western Battery Road, Committee of Adjustment Application, Agreement for Child Care Facility, Request for Authorization Report, Ward 19.
Sorry, which item was it again?
43.
43.
Would you like to move the staff recommendation?
Yes, sorry. I was going to speak to it very briefly if I could.
Please do. Say something.
Is the applicant in the room? I think that Centre Court was going to have a representative here.
I do believe there was. They were here not too long ago.
We were to present them with a gold star for responding to a need within the community. Let me just, I'll tell a 90-second story if I may.
Yeah, well, we can also hold it down if you like.
Oh. Then I have to wait to tell my story.
Okay.
Then we have to.
30-second story. It's up to.
It's up to you.
I will just. I wanted to tell a quick story about how this report came about, but I can wait until it's turned on the agenda if you want me to hold it. That's fine.
It is on the. Would you like to hear the story now? Okay.
30 seconds. Developer comes in for a site plan application, walks into the office and says, here's my plan. We're just going through the regular process, already pre-zoned for 28 stories. It's located beside a park, so I said, would you consider putting a childcare in the podium of the building? They said, give us a week. They came back in a week and said, we'll do it. I said, what do you need? They said, 3 extra stories on the building. If you do the math, It's a $5 million childcare center fully outfitted. Like, this isn't the shell. This is a fully outfitted 50-child daycare, and the keys will be handed over to the city that we will own for those 3 stories. We did an immediate public consultation, got overwhelming support from the community, and thanks to the hard work of staff, and in particular the work of the developer to drive this forward, we are going to have Liberty Village's first daycare, and it'll be city-owned.
Very well done. And Councillor Layton, would you like to name this developer so they can get the good credit?
They bought the property from someone else that was previously zoned for 28 stories, and we get a new daycare as a result. This is a very good news story.
Wonderful.
Gold star for Center Court.
Okay. So all those in favor of giving Center Court Development a gold star
Will be the only gold
and,
star issued
and
by me.
adopting the staff recommendations? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Good work, everyone, on that file. We are now heading to deferred items from our last meeting. TE 32.44, Davenport Triangle Guiding Principles, final report, Ward 20.
I'm just going to hold this down for the moment.
Okay. Next item is TE 32.45, Assumption of Services, Registered Reference Plan 66R-26997, Parts 38, 39, 40, Extension of Ackman Lane, Vintage Sky Design Group Limited, Ward 19.
Yes, thank you. I'll move the staff recommendations, please.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.46, 96 Spadina Avenue and 379, 383, and 385, and 391 Avenue Street West, zoning amendment application, preliminary report, Ward 20.
I'm going to move the staff recommendations with expanded notice.
Okay.
Or wait, no, we already had the meeting on this, sorry. I'm just going to move the staff recommendations.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. TE 32.47, 5777 Wade Avenue, zoning amendment application, preliminary report, Ward 18. Would someone like to hold this item down for Councillor Bailao, or are we moving?
That's, is it Ward 18?
Ward 18.
Yes, that's me. Could I hold Councillor Bilau's items down, please? So I'll hold that down.
Hold it, okay. Okay, that item is held. TE 32.48, 1637, 1645 Bathurst Street, zoning amendment application, preliminary report, Ward 21.
Yes, I'd like to move the staff recommendation, but request an expanded notice area.
Okay, all those in favor of the amendment? Any opposed? Item as amended. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.49, 263 Logan Avenue and 15 Busy Street, zoning amendment application, preliminary report, Ward 30.
Yes, busy is it? It's very busy.
15 at least.
Very cute. So can I just please have the community meeting scheduled, but with a larger notification?
Okay. Amendment is on the screen. All those in favor? Any opposed? That
It's Value Village.
Very good. Item is amended. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.50, construction staging area, 11 and 25 Ordnance Street, Ward 19.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll move the staff recommendations.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.51, construction staging area time extension, 175, 191 Dundas Street East, Ward 27. I will be moving the recommendations in the staff report. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.52, construction staging area, Grosvenor Street and St. Luke Lane, 480, 494 Young Street, Ward 27. I will be moving to adopt the staff recommendations. All the necessary additional conditions that we wanted are now embedded in the report. So it's now deal standard in Ward 27. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.53, installation removal of on-street accessible parking spaces, April 2018, delegated Ward 14.
Move approval.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. TE 32.54, installation of on-street accessible parking space, April 2018, non-delegated, Ward 30. Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. TE 32.55, accessible loading zone, McCall Street, Ward 20.
I'll move the staff recommendations.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried, thank you. TE 32.56, Toronto 2018 North America, Central America, Caribbean Championships, Ward 20.
I'll move the staff recommendations and also note that Councillor Layton is competing in these championships in the wrestling category this year.
Why do you do that?
Okay, good luck, Councillor Layton. All those in favor? Any
Wait,
opposed?
they compete if I
That carries.
vote in favor?
We will give you a gold star should you prevail. 30, TE 32.57, 12, 14, and 16 York Street, amendments to Section 16, agreement, road closure authorization. Ward 2028.
So I believe we're going to forward this to council without recommendations. Councillor Joyce?
Correct. Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. TE 32.58, Dufferin Street from Dundas Street West to Bloor Street West, extended peak period parking regulations, Ward 18. Councillor McMahon?
I'm going to hold that for Councillor Blau.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, will you be holding all her items moving forward?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. TE 32.59, parking amendment, Nina Street and Melgun Road, Ward 21.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'll move the staff recommendations there and note that if what we're doing there is for the non-winter months, rather than have 15-day a week, 15-day a month alternate side parking, we're doing it month by month, which actually cuts in half the number of times that the parking police can hit your residents. The parking enforcement officers can hit your residents on those transition days. So we're doing an experiment, and if it works, it might be something for you you to consider. Usually they say 15 days. The experiment is moving from 15 days alternate side parking to 1 month alternate side parking, so everyone knows it's the first of the month, whatever day of the week it is, and that way it halves the number of times that the parking police, you know, at 9 a.m. in the morning, they come out and start dinging people, and then your office is flooded with phone calls. So
Point of
we're doing a
order.
little experiment here.
Councillor Fletcher?
I would just
order?
like to point on that. I would like everyone to know that a number of years ago, City Council passed a motion that I had made to lengthen the grace period in the
Yes.
mornings,
Yes.
and that Toronto Police Operations have refused to comply with that, although it is well within their jurisdiction. So we've asked them a number of times, but it is a police matter. Parking enforcement refuses. So I'm happy to try to get that fixed with you, Councillor,
Yes,
on that side.
on that side.
So are we moving the recommendations to
Yes,
staff
we
report?
are. I'm moving approval.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.60, parking amendments, Charles Street West, Ward 27. I would like to move the recommendations in the staff report and to thank staff for actually producing the report. We keep tweaking this little section of the neighborhood along the roadways to try to make it safer for pedestrians and easier for cars and every other person using the road, so thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.61, parking amendments, Cooper Street, Freeland Street, Ward 28.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm going to hold the item. I'm still waiting for a technical adjustment. Oh, you have it? Okay, then I'll move to approve the staff recommendations. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so let's move the amendment
Here's
first.
the amendment.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Item as amended? Any opposed? Carried. Okay, thank you. And thanks, clerks, for getting that ready. TE 32.62, parking amendments, Heward Avenue, Ward 30. Okay, all those in,
Put your microphone on, I'm having some real trouble hearing you.
Approve. Thank you.
all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.63, parking amendments, Wagstaff Drive, Ward 30.
I have that down for a month, but I'd like to sine die that, so I'll wait, because I'm waiting for a petition here.
Okay. Deferral motion is on the screen.
Okay, take it for next month. We'll see if they've got it right.
Any opposed? Sorry.
The neighbors, from
Are
the
we
neighbors.
okay with this? Okay. Motion is moved. Any opposed? Thank you. That's deferred. We'll see you back next month. T 32.64, traffic control signals, College Street at Havelock Street, Rush Home Park Crescent, and College Street at Gladstone Avenue, Ward 18. We're holding.
We're holding for Councillor Palau. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. TE 32.65, mid-block pedestrian traffic control signal, Spadina Road between Lowther Avenue and Bloor Street West, Ward 20.
I'm going to move the staff recommendations, and I just want to say quickly, this is a new traffic signal on Spadina that staff are recommending, immediately across from an Indigenous seniors residence, Wigwamin, and adjacent to a library, and I think this is the type of vision, zero measure, that we need to see more of, and I want to thank transportation staff for bringing this forward.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.66, traffic control signals, Broadview Avenue, Ward 29.
Madam Chair, I'm going to be referring this back to staff, but I have to check with staff about how much time they need before the referral. So I'm going to hold it down, and once we've gone through all the non-timed items, get back to you.
Thank
Do
you.
it as a quick release.
TE 32.67, traffic control signals, Mortimer Avenue and Dewhurst Boulevard North, Ward 29.
Going to be moving an alternate recommendation, but I have to check again with the same staff on the wording of that motion, so I'm going to
We'll
hold it
that
as
for
well.
you. TE 32.68, traffic calming speed humps, Macaulay Avenue, Ward 18, and we're holding for Councillor Bailao. Okay. TE 32.69, traffic calming speed humps, Rousset Avenue. Again, we'll be holding that for Councillor Bailao, held by Councillor McMahon. TE 32.70, traffic calming speed humps, Vanoli Street, Ward 20.
Just going to hold that down very briefly.
Okay, we will hold. TE 32.71, traffic calming speed humps, Hanson Street, Ward 32.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. So I will move the, what am I moving here? The alternate recommendations, and you may have read about this street in the news recently when I think the Star was doing something on Vision Zero. But so this street would have met the warrants, shockingly, had we changed them from, you know, we lowered the residential speed limit to 30 kilometers, but we're still doing the warrants at 10 kilometers over, but we're using 40 kilometers. And so that, we need a discussion on that. I'm not sure why we're not bringing it, since we changed it to 30, bringing it so that it would be 40, and then it wouldn't be here. They would have met their warrants, which would be the first time ever in my ward. So happy to move alternate recommendations. Thanks.
Okay. The alternate recommendations are on the screen. No, that's not it. Sorry, it's I believe that's the wrong language, is it not?
Oh.
Yeah, so we are on item number 71. Yeah. While the clerks sort that out, we should thank them. They have been receiving a phenomenal amount of communication and correspondence regarding one particular matter that's coming up, and that's changing lanes. So, Councillor's moving alternative ground.
Yeah, I think just let me make sure.
Okay. So why don't, you got it?
Here's the alternate recs right there. If, despite the findings of they say they want to install.
No, I know, but you had the wrong address in the body of the motion. Yeah. Why don't we hold that, we'll hold that down for you, Councillor McMahon, and we'll come right back to it, just to make sure that the motion and the language line up. Okay. We'll just move along. TE 32.72, speed humps poll results, Claxton Boulevard, Ward 21. Councillor Mihevik?
Yes, thank you very much, Ward 72. Sorry, I was lost in space there.
You were lost in your smartphone,
I was lost on my smartphone, yes.
which is
Number
kind of
70
space.
Is it number 72?
72, correct.
Yes, please approve the alternate recommendations in the report.
There it is on the screen. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.73, speed humps poll results, Winnett Avenue, Ward 21. Don't get lost in space, Councillor Mahevik, it's
Yes,
still yours.
I'm back. Please support the alternate recommendations, which I'll move.
We will put that on the screen for you. Okay. All those in favor? Okay. Any opposed? That carries. TE 32.74, speed humps poll results, St. Joseph Street, Ward 27. I would like to move the alternative recommendations in the report as well. The item is, the motion is on the screen. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.75, West Overhill Road Parking Regulations, Ward 21.
Here, I request support for approving the staff recommendations,
Okay.
or the recommendations in the correspondence.
Yeah, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.76, use of Nathan Phillips Square for various events from July 1st, 2018 to April 30th, 2019, Ward 27. I would like to move the recommendations in the staff report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. TE 32.77, endorsement of events for liquor licensing purposes. I will just hold that down in case there are last-minute additions and amendments, which means we are now at TE 32.78. Can I please have a motion to add new business from item number 78 to 88? 10 new items. Councillor Perks? Okay. All those in favor? Okay. Any opposed? That carries. TE 32.78, residential demolition application, 193 Silver Birch Avenue, Ward 32.
Thank you, and I move staff recommendations.
Okay. All those in favor? There's not recommendations in your letter.
Sorry, in my letter, sorry.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. TE 32.79, reducing the speed limit on High Park Boulevard, Sunnyside Avenue, Wright Avenue, Ward 14.
I'll move the recommendations and note that effectively what we're doing here is proving that you can, too, make a collector 30 kilometers.
Well done. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Everybody take a note of item number 79, and you can copy and paste for future correspondence. TE 32.80, parking amendment for Brock Avenue, Ward 18. And we're holding that for Councillor Bailao, held by Councillor McMahon. Or would you like to move the recommendations in the letter?
No, my instructions are to hold Anna's items.
Hold everything? Okay.
For Councillor Plaza.
So that is held. TE 32.81, speed humps installation on Brock Avenue, Dundas Street West to Florence Street, Ward 18. Councillor
Holding.
McMahon? Okay,
Yep.
thank you. Held. 32, TE 32.82, accessible loading zone request on the north side of College Street between a point of 77 meters west of Dufferin Street and a point 11 meters further west, Ward 18. We're holding that. Okay, thank you, Councillor. TE 32.83, parking amendment on Osler Street, Dupont Street to Caribou Avenue, Ward 18.
Holding.
Thank you, Councillor McMahon. TE 32.84, reopening of item TE 31.96, titled Parking Amendments on Sheridan Avenue between Dundas Street West and College Street, Ward 18.
Holding again.
Okay. TE 32.85, parking amendments for Sudbury Street, Ward 18.
Holding.
Holding. TE 32.86, reducing the speed limit on Dover Court Road, Dundas Street West to Queen Street West, Ward 1819.
I need to be on Anna's payroll. Holding again.
Okay, yes, you do. TE 32.87, construction staging area on Duncan Street, south of Adelaide Street West, Ward 20.
I'm going to move the recommendations in my letter.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.88, Downtown Young Business Improvement Area 2018 Parklet Program, Ward 27. I'd like to move the recommendations in the letter. and congratulate the downtown community for another summer of parklets that you will get to enjoy shortly. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. That carries. So we are now moving to time items, starting with TE 32.1, naming of a public lane south of Danforth Avenue, extending easterly from Carlaw Avenue, then southerly to Harcourt Avenue, Ward 30. Are there any members of the public who are here to speak to this timed item? Okay. I don't see any hands indicated, and the speakers list on my page is unpopulated. So, Councillor Fletcher?
Yes, I don't know if Councillor Fragedakis, is she coming back?
I don't know. Would you like to hold it down, or?
I would, because it's naming this lane after Saul Corman, who has operated quarries for many years. He's an icon, the Duke of the Danforth.
Okay, we'll hold
and
that down
I'm going to ask for a recorded vote, and I'd like to have my sister councillor on that recorded. So when she comes back, perhaps we can do that.
Okay,
Chair.
certainly.
Thank you very much.
TE 32.2, naming of a public lane west of Kippen Davy Avenue, extending between Q Beach Avenue and Bowler Avenue, Ward 32. Are there any members of the public here to speak to this item? Don't see any hands. We will let Ward Councillor 32. Well, how should we dispense of it?
Thank you very much. I will just, I'm going to move staff recommendations, but I would just like to tell you a little bit about Andy Olvet, who unfortunately passed away recently of cancer. But so he came to Canada. He emigrated when he was 2 years of age, arrived here with his family, and they were instrumental, if you know the beach area, in building the Estonian houses on Queen Street, way further, all the way east, almost by Councillor Crawford's ward there. And then from then on, so he's quite the icon in the Estonian community in Toronto, as well as the beach community. And he had, I mean, he was a bit of a king of Kensington, had a way with people, getting them involved, encouraging active living for seniors, getting them out to Q. He's very involved with the Q Tennis Club. He's very involved with our Q skating rink. He was, you know, people often forget that we have a lake down there that's actually beautiful and clean and warmish that you can swim in, and that we should, instead of hiking up to our cottages and whatnot, we can swim in the lake. And this guy would not only swim in Donald Somerville Pool every day, but he would swim from his house across the lake to get to the pool. And he tried to encourage everyone to do so, as well as seniors. So he was loved, very much loved in the community. It is a true honor to be able to name this lane after him. And his brother, sorry, his brother's here, and I just wanted, he's a little shy of speaking, but I wanted to point out Sid Olvet, his brother right there, big, very involved in the Estonian community. Yeah. So we'll look forward to seeing you walking down Andy Olvet Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McMahon, for that wonderful, wonderful tribute. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.3, 25 and 35 Liberty Street, 58 Atlantic Avenue, and 51 to 61 and 865 Jefferson Avenue, zoning amendment and rental housing demolition and conversion application. This is the final report. I believe that there are definitely a number of speakers. I'm going to suggest, at the request of Councillor, actually it's Councillor Perks' suggestion, that we hear the two items together. Following this item is TE 32.4, alterations to a designated heritage property, intention to designate under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement, 58 Atlantic Avenue. A number of the speakers listed on those two items are the same names, so if you would like to combine your deputation, we'd love to hear it. Sorry, can you hold on, please? No, that's, so I have just received some clarification instructions from the clerk to make sure that those two items are heard separately. So in the interest of clarity and process of integrity, I'm going to request that our first item to be heard right now is item number 3, which is the planning final report. Following that, we will listen to deputants on item number 4 for those who want to speak to the heritage matter. So I would call our first speaker, Dermot Sweeney from Sweeney and Company Architects. And you are not Dermot. There's Dermot. Okay, Dermot, welcome. You have 5 minutes when you're ready. The clock is on your left-hand side. Yeah.
There we go. Madam Chair and Council.
You're welcome to sit down if you like.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, thank you.
It'll bring you closer to the microphone. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Really, what I wanted to get up and talk to you about is really to thank everyone. This has been a process we've been through for a little over 2.5 years since we applied. It's very, very critical. This kind of building gets built in Toronto. We're very, very involved in office. We're seeing a lot of companies now start to look outside of Toronto because we literally have no space. We're below 4% vacancy. Many companies that have invested time, money, and located in Liberty Village are growing and can't find new space. I think it's very, very critical. We have worked diligently with staff, heritage, planning staff, housing, everybody through the process. I'd like to personally thank all of them. I think at the end of the day, we ended up with a great result. Thanks also to Councillor Perks, who's been a great supporter of employment in this employment district. On the heritage, one thing I will say, we're very proud of the fact.
Yes, there are two reports. If you can
okay.
contain your remarks only to the planning report right now.
The planning report does refer to the heritage. So all I would like to say is we've worked very, very hard from day one. We all recognized the one building as being very important, as did heritage staff at City Hall. We allowed that building to be listed, and we've worked together to save the building, create an atrium space, and do a great project. Okay. And thanks to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the speaker? Okay. Yes, please, Councillor Perks.
Dermot, you're the only person here representing the applicant on the planning report?
On the planning report, yes.
Okay. So the one piece that I'm curious about, with the rental replacement,
yes.
My understanding is there's another building being built?
Yes.
Yes, and tenants are going to be moving into there. Can you talk to me a little bit about how the timing of those two things, of your development and the other development where the rental replacement goes?
Yes. Okay. On this particular site, it is owned employment land, so we were not able to replace on our site. In fact, for tenants, this actually works out in a positive way.
No, I'm not talking, I don't want your opinion on
No.
It's
positive in that
the timing.
The timing is good because the other project will commence long before this will. So we will be in a position to, currently the schedule of the other project would commence construction within the next few months and be ready 2.5 years out.
And when do you imagine work would start on this building?
We still have to go through site plan, get permits. So we're targeting hopefully next spring for a construction start. Winter, spring.
Okay. That's disappointing. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Don't go away. You have another set of questions from Councillor Layton.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to get an idea of what changes occurred since the original application came in, because I know there was some significant concerns from the local community about it. It came in at 59 meters.
It came in at 12 stories. We reduced the height by a little over 8 meters. 2 stories were taken off. The other issues that were brought up were the proximity of the new building to the face of the heritage building and to the face of the street. So the setbacks along the east side of the project, above the heritage building, were increased from 3 meters to 5 meters. The rear setback was increased and the north setback was reduced, but still maintained over 5 meters back of the heritage building's face, the north face of the building. So essentially, there was about 50,000 square feet taken off. There was 2 floors removed, and the setbacks were increased back from the street faces or the heritage face.
The parking, is this going to be paid parking?
I believe it will be paid parking monthly. The market is changing very rapidly, which is great. I think the King Street project, other things have helped. We see less demand for cars. We have established a certain number of cars. We were approached at one point by TPA. We haven't heard back, but yes, it will be paid parking.
I don't think TPA right now will want to have anything to do with purchasing land just for the...
Correct.
In the short term. However, I think that that's something that you should pursue because that lot across the street could
make
really
a nice
turn
park
into something more valuable. The developer still has appeal rights to the board, correct? Like with all this switchover to the LPAT.
I believe so.
Because of the timing, I can confirm this with staff, but
yes,
it's your understanding that you have appeal rights for the 12-story, 59-meter to the board.
Typically, we're not interested in appealing. We've worked pretty hard together.
Or everybody says that.
Oh, yeah.
But you do, I just want to...
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
I think a really important point is the appeal right to the board. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, Dermot, thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to call our next speaker, Jack Gibney, Sunnyside Historical Society, to speak to the final zoning application report. You have 5 minutes. The clock is on your left.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Why are we here so late? We made depositions to the city councilors, 2 of them, a year ago. We put an article on our website, circulated it widely, and we started a petition that has 903 signatures in our support, which on a very local issue is quite a bit. So although I'm here at this late date, I hope you'll forgive me. We got here as fast as we could. Why is this important heritage? This is wind power. Back in 1834, you see the largest piece of equipment in the city on the left on the screen is a wind engine. They used it at Seagram's to make a very important product in early Toronto. In 1899, you can see that wind was the featured product in the Toronto Industrial Exhibition. So throughout the 19th century, it was hugely important to our heritage. In 2002, the exhibition place has a great big wind turbine, and wind is going to be very, very important in our future. First Nations. The First Nations lived here. Very quickly, I've taken the Philpotts map that shows the trails and clearings the First Nations used, and I've overlaid them here. So right in the top left center, you see a red square. That's where the buildings are. And it's essentially, Liberty Street is a straightened out version of the previous native trail that went through 2 clearings. Interestingly, one of them is over by the carpet factory on the left. The one on the right is right where Liberty Village has their market trading area, shopping plaza. So this building is long at the heart of a trade and innovation center. And what are we asking for? This red building that you see here, on the left is 25 Liberty, on the front is 35 Liberty, currently covered with stucco, and yet to be built at the time this rendering was made is 65 Jefferson, which is like that building, but it's bigger, like bookends to 25. This is a picture of the developer's proposal. It's absolutely beautiful, and when we asked them to provide a more respectful setback for heritage, they did it. We thank them very much. And I want to show you what it would look like if we kept the heritage with this building.
Sir, I want to just let you know that we're speaking to the final report. The heritage matter is being dealt with in the next item.
I'm only going to speak once.
You're only going to speak once? Okay. Yeah, so Just for clarity, I think it's simply because one of these matters is a statutory matter. The clerks just want to make sure that everyone is aware that the final report, we speak to the, we keep our comments around the planning matters, and then the following item is the heritage matter. It just,
Madam Chair, on a point of order, to be clear,
Yeah.
the planning report references the heritage matters. So this is why I was suggesting we consider them together, but now that the clerk has suggested we deal with them separately, I would encourage everyone who has anything to say on this to speak on the first item so that they've preserved any appeal rights should they wish to appeal. Okay?
Okay, thanks, Gordon. I'm not sure where I should speak. I'm just talking when I'm told to go, okay? So along the front of the...
If you can just hold on, sir, I'm just getting some instructions from the clerk.
The clock is still running.
Okay. So just for clarity, and it has nothing to do with your remarks, but everything to do with the process here, and because we're just getting ready for what the post-OMB world would look like, I'm going to ask you a question, and you can just answer this question. Based on your answer to the question, the clerks will make sure that your name is listed on the next item because should you choose to speak to heritage. So my question to you, sir, is would you like to speak to matters of heritage relating to this application?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
So we will add him to that.
Please continue. I'm going to give you 2 minutes back to your clock because that literally is the 2 minutes that you lost while we were sorting this out. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So you can see the heritage buildings can be retained and the entire upper structure is still there. Now, in drawing this rendering, we haven't attempted to design things for the developer, but they could still build their atrium above the building, or they could attach the back of the building directly to their lobby. The heritage buildings could be returned to their original state as a factory, so they would have the post and beam above your heads exposed. They would have the stone walls. They could use them for whatever they like. This kind of heritage space would be extremely sought after and valuable. I think the developer would actually make money by doing this. So why is this viable heritage? You can see the picture on the top left is what these buildings look like, and everybody honestly thought the stucco had been put on the brick and the whole building was ruined. Modern stucco is power nailed on top, over top of styrofoam. To our surprise, we were practicing at Jane's Walk on the weekend, and we see on the west elevation of 65 Jefferson, somebody's cut off a 2-foot by 2-foot square of styrofoam. You can see they just cut it off with a box cutter. It comes off very easily, exposing, in this case, exposing the foundation stone. If they cut the hole up earlier, higher, it would have exposed brick. And you can see that there's nothing wrong. The stone hasn't been damaged by this stuff, which is power nailed on. And what we have is this is a 1990s photo. We date it by the cars that were parked beside it. We have beautiful brick on the north elevation. We have beautiful brick on the west elevation, covered with paint, which is almost self-removing as we speak. And inside, the picture on the left shows the rubble wall, all the length of 35 Liberty. That's just the kind of thing they make beautiful art spaces out of and are highly sought after. And on the right is a picture of the post and beam, which is existing throughout the building. This is directly under the roof. Absolutely gorgeous heritage. In fact, 2 buildings north of it, they are building a building with artificial post and beam.
Jack, can I please have your final thought?
Okay, this is right next door in 65 Liberty, and here's what the building will look like. And we're asking that you give the Heritage Department time to evaluate it, not stop the thing, just give the Heritage Department the time they need. I think they might be a couple of months. I can't speak for them.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any questions of the speaker? Okay, seeing none, thank you. I'd like to call our next speaker, Mark P. Camara. Okay, welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And just to clarify, will you be speaking to matters of heritage as well?
I will. I should add that what's important is that actually the next report, the heritage report, recommends changes to the recommendations set out in the planning report. So I'm not sure how you consider the two items in that sense separately from one another, because the heritage report says you should change one of the recommendations in the planning report. So it makes it difficult.
We understand that. These are just the instructions from the clerk, so I'm just making sure that
All right.
you can clarify that.
So, Madam Chair, members of Community Council, you'll have my letter before you dated May 1st, 2018, with respect to this project. I represent a group of tenants who currently reside in the building and live-work units, as well as a couple of tenants who are not in the building right now, but who've had their rights preserved through the Landlord and Tenant Board. The purpose of my appearance before you today and the letter I've provided to you is to request that, as you regard both the planning report and the Preservation Services Board report, that Community Council and Council refuse the applications for the reasons I've set out in my letter. In the alternative, that the applications be deferred to be considered at a later meeting of Community Council, to allow for the reevaluation of 58 Atlantic Avenue, as you heard from the last presentation, and also to allow for further discussions between my clients, the city, and the proponent around the proposed tenant relocation plan. In the further alternative, if Community Council and Council is to approve the development, then that the development be improved, be brought to a gold star standard by improving the tenant relocation plan. In terms of whether Council should refuse the application, the live-work units my clients live in currently represent the type of employment uses the city wants to promote in Liberty Village in our submission. They cannot be replicated. If my clients are relocated from this building, they will have to have separate residential and work spaces. These units were recognized by the Ontario Municipal Board as good planning in 1999, and they have had a vital role in revitalizing this area. They've brought not only employment, but culture to the area and made it an attractive place to visit and live. In our view, it does not represent good planning to allow for the demolition of these units and the relocation or displacement of my clients. It also will represent, according to the Toronto Preservation Services Board, a tear in the heritage fabric of the area. For these reasons, we think the applications should be denied. If Council is not prepared right now to refuse the applications, it is our submission they should be deferred. Firstly, to revisit the heritage protections to be afforded to 58 Atlantic, as you heard on the last presentation, and also as you'll see from the Toronto Preservation Services Board report. And again, to allow for further discussions regarding the tenant relocation plan, which is, in the view of my clients, very deficient, and also was the understanding of my clients to be subject to further discussions. We understand there have been revisions that have been helpful, but it remains deficient. Should Council not defer the applications, we think it is incumbent upon Community Council and Council to improve the tenant relocation plan by, among other things, making sure that there is no time lapse between the time my clients are required to leave the subject building and move into the proposed building on Ordnance Street. This will visit a great prejudice on my clients and does not represent a fair approach to tenant relocation. They should be allowed to stay in the present building until the new building is ready for occupancy. And as you heard, the new buildings are about to be under construction, and the current proposed building will take some time to go through site plan approval, as well as to obtain building permits and to get the approval through the number of documents that are required to sign with third parties. Further, the tenant relocation package at present requires that my clients, for example, pay an increase of 4% for their new units, an immediate increase. This is not fair, given that the units are considerably smaller than the current units, and they do not, in their view, represent an improvement in their living conditions. There should be no fees for the parking and storage locker that there are proposed, but that my clients do not currently incur. This places them in a situation that is not comparable to their existing rental circumstances. And also, the tenant relocation plan in our submission is not sufficient in terms of compensation. And you'll see from Schedule B to the letter, there's a proposed compensation package which would be fair. Finally, in terms of the Section 37 contribution, if this proposal is to be approved, my clients propose that the Section 37 benefits include 12 individual workspaces located in the new building to allow my clients to continue the work that has contributed so much to the vitality of this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members of the public, I'm going to ask you to refrain from clapping. If you want to show approval of the remarks of the deputant, you may do some jazz hands. Just like that.
That would be gold star, Madam Chair.
That would be gold star. Hang on tight. Are there any members with questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to call Terry D. Merson. Terry, welcome. And Terry, I see that you also have your name down for the next item, so I believe that you might be speaking again.
I am speaking strictly to Heritage, Chair. So should I speak now or should I speak?
You were the last person on this item, so let me just stay in your chair. What I'd like to do is ask members of the public, are there any other members here to speak to the final report on 25 and 35 Liberty Street? I'll just condense the address there. Okay, seeing none, then we will move on to items TE 32.4 and stay in your chair. First speaker was Dermot Sweeney, but I believe his remarks have concluded. Thank you, Dermot. He's just made that indication. Followed by Michael McClellan, and then Mark, who we've just heard from, Kimmerer. But I believe Mark also brought both his remarks together, and we made note that he was going to speak to the heritage matter, and then Terry yourself. So what I'd like to do is ask you to give up your chair. We'll invite Michael McClellan to speak first, and then you can come right back afterwards.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Michael, welcome.
Thank you very much.
You know the routine here.
Yes,
5
I
minutes.
do. Thank you very much. I was thinking Dermot was going to speak in advance of me and say many things, so I hadn't planned a full presentation. My sense of this project, we've been working on this project for about 2.5 years. We've worked intensively with all the staff at the city, with the heritage staff at the city, with the planning staff. We've talked about the retention of 25 Liberty, which the heritage staff were very, very pleased with. We asked them, is there any other thing to consider? And they said, no, nothing else, this is it. I recognize that what's come up recently and has been an issue, I think, throughout the project is tenant relocation and the existing tenants on the site. I'd have to say that that's not something that we can deal with from a heritage perspective. And in fact, even as the scheme that they showed, which showed retention of those heritage buildings, wouldn't necessarily solve maybe a solution to a tenant relocation issue. We've tried to work very hard with the city staff, and we thank the city staff for their cooperation and help. Sometimes I'm here not agreeing with the city staff. I'm so sorry. But in this case, we've had a very cooperative relationship, and they've supported the project. And so I'm very pleased with that, and I would really here to answer any questions you may have.
Michael, thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? Councillor Perks, go ahead.
You saw Mr. Gibney's presentation on the first item earlier about the additional heritage features. I'd like to hear your comments on that.
Those are additional heritage features. I find that every old building in the city has some heritage aspect. It's really to understand from the city's position, does it have is there a municipal strength in sort of saying this must be preserved? There's a possibility to interpret history, but is there a necessity from the municipality's position to actually conserve a building in place because of its specific history? And we didn't get that response from the heritage staff. They did a very thorough analysis of all the properties.
I'm asking you as a heritage architect, is there no value in that building?
I love keeping any building that I can think of. The problem with this is that, in fact, this project's been through 2.5 years of study. It's in a process of financing. Its final financing isn't available until City Council agrees with this project, and it would throw a serious jeopardy to this project right now to talk about redesigning the project.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. Any other questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
I'd like to request Terry Demerson. Terry, sorry about that.
Thank you, Chair Bontemps.
You have 5 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Toronto and East York City Council, councillors, Chair. My name's Terry Demerson. I am a resident, a live-work resident at 25 Liberty. I actually live in 35 Liberty, the building that's been proposed to be torn down. I'm here to speak strictly on heritage today, and I think this process is incredible that I'm allowed to speak to you today. The last and only other time I have spoken for a city matter was in front of the Toronto Heritage Board on April 19th, a very serious matter whereby the Toronto Heritage Board disagreed with Heritage Services. It was a unanimous decision that there was something worth investigating on the property. A single pen stroke and a vote today by each one of you members could see that heritage removed, but it's the board's wisdom that it remain. Now, I want to look at, for instance, my efforts that have been steady and steadfast for over 3 years since this developer bought the building. Is there a place I can see the time? Sorry, Chair.
The clock is on your left.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, it's counting up. Thank you. For 3.5 years, since this developer bought the building, because I live in the building, I have an intimate knowledge of the building, the basement, all aspects, studios that my neighbors live in, and I know significantly what is at stake here. For 2.5 years, 3 years, I've tried to be in touch with Heritage Services. I have to say that the door was closed very strongly towards me with my opinion, and it took not only a freedom of information, which lasted 8 months, but then a provincial mediation for me to not only see a bit behind the curtain, but finally speak to the chairperson, Mary McDonald. And it was her expression to me when we spoke about this building that their focus through the developer's efforts were at the building that was being saved, not the buildings being demolished. And I think that is exactly what the Heritage Board saw. And they raised a flag immediately. And before you, you have their report and their recommendation. I think Mr. Dermot McSweeney stood up here on his deputation, and I agree with everything he said. This city needs development. This city needs good development. But I have a conflict, because when I hear things like when both wonderful Mr. Gibney spoke at the Liberty Village BIA, and then also ERA Architects spoke at the Liberty Village BIA about this heritage issue, the ERA Architects used the words that they had to consider the footplate of the new building. And here you've heard that gentleman, I'm sorry I've forgotten his name, speak about financing. These are not issues to destroy heritage buildings in Toronto. Footplate of new buildings and financing to a developer are inconsequential. We are looking at a building which is over 120 years old that was the fabric of Toronto. Excuse me for a second. Heritage value cannot be defined by what the developer wants. Yes, the developer is key, but they had an obligation when they bought a building they knew was over 100 years old. I commend them for coming forward and saying to Heritage Services, there's something of value here. But in my opinion, I really think the development led the city, and I don't think the developer should lead this council today. I think it's this council's obligation to see this matter for what it is. We're asking for a review. What is time? We talked about time for financing. I have 5 minutes here today before you. You have an election cycle in October. It's all time. But we have a building that stood for over 120 years, a heritage building. The Ontario Wind Engine and Pump Company has added to the commerce, development, and fabric of this city, and not just this city. There's historical records that it added to the very fabric of the Commonwealth, throughout the entire Commonwealth. Heritage Board has asked for time. I'm almost out of time. I ask that these buildings not be out of time, that the study be allowed. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Are there any questions for the speaker today? Okay. I don't see any. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other members here who would like to speak to this matter in this report? Okay, seeing none, thank you. And thank you, members of the public, for those jazz hands. Then I would like to bring this matter into Community Council and ask members if they have questions of staff. Councillor Matlow.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the Heritage staff. What if we wanted to put the brakes on the development and preserve the entirety of all the potential heritage buildings? What legal abilities do we or do we not have to do so, including the one that was stuccoed over?
So through you, Chair, what I would say is that if it was the desire of Community Council and Council for us to go back and to look at the entire property again, as we did in 2016, we did go and we did research and evaluate the entire property. And at that time, we used the information that we had available to us, and we identified what we felt was the primary resource on the site. And that's what we moved forward with the listing for in 2016. If it was the will that we go back and look at it again, we certainly could do that. But what I would say is that through that research and evaluation process, we may come back with the same recommendation that we have before us today. It's our obligation to provide you with recommendations that conserve the cultural heritage value of the site. And based on that research and evaluation, that we may come back with that same recommendation.
And then I just got one other question. So if we did take the time to do the review that has been requested by some of the deputants, perhaps to you or to the area planner or city legal, what are the other considerations that we in the local council would have to consider as far as, like, would there be any threat to any of the concessions or improvements that have been made through the negotiations? What could the developer do in the interim that might jeopardize any of the benefits that have been achieved? What do we have to weigh if we were to take the time to do the review?
So the application through you, Madam Chair, the application has been appealed, and it does run through the OMB process as opposed to the new tribunal process. So if we defer the item or if staff is asked to take another look at it, we still, could be facing that OMB challenge, and the argument would be, because we have two positive staff reports in front of Community Council today, that could be used against us.
So is there a potential that the other party could even bring our own planners up as witnesses against us?
Yes, because we now, planning staff, both community planning and heritage preservation services staff are on the record with our recommendations to Community Council.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I see Councillor Davis. Questions to staff.
Has the applicant been requested to consider deferral, and if so, what has their answer been? You didn't hear it? Should I repeat it? I said, has the applicant, well, I guess in light of the decision of the board, been requested to consider deferral, and have they responded to that request? Are you aware of any discussions with the applicant about deferral and what their response has been?
No, the applicant has not been asked to consider deferral. Also, to clarify the previous comments related to the appeal, the application is not under appeal. It has not been appealed. In a hypothetical situation, were it to be appealed, were the decision of council to be appealed, I believe that's what Linda was speaking to. So, but no, the applicant has not been approached about the opportunity for a deferral, as staff's recommendations do not reflect that.
And it has not been appealed yet?
That is correct.
Okay. Councillor, do you have a follow-up question? Councillor Davis? Your Councillor Perks, you will have a chance to ask your own question. So, Councillor Davis,
to
do
read
you
your
have a
lips,
follow-up
but I
question?
wasn't successful.
Okay. Then I'd like to acknowledge Councillor Layton, and I think Councillor Perks afterwards.
Great. Thank you very much to Heritage staff. The evaluation that was done in 2016, did it have the benefit of the information that was presented us today?
There has been that has been, through you, Chair, there has been some additional information that's been presented to us regarding the condition of the heritage buildings. Obviously, we looked at them from the exterior as stucco buildings. The applicant has presented that perhaps the stucco may not have damaged the buildings, so that is something that we did not have before us at the time. Also, we would not have looked at the interiors at the time, and that's been presented to us since. So we have received additional information.
It's been presented since. This isn't the first time.
Since the evaluation in 2016.
So this isn't the first time you're seeing it here. It's certainly not the first time I've seen it.
No, but since our evaluation, it has, that's what's changed.
And has this changed the position of heritage staff, the information presented about the foundation brick, and has it caused heritage staff to change their position at all?
We would have to go back and fully research and evaluate the property again based on that information. So we don't have enough information just by looking at one sample of a part of the building that's been removed, where the stucco has been removed. We simply don't have enough information at this time.
Okay, to planning staff, there's been some changes to the building. Were there any additional, were we looking for any greater change than what we've got in this case? It's quite similar to a building across the street, so.
No, we're satisfied with the form of the building.
Okay, on the 37 award, there's a 1.2 million for 37. So two questions on this. There's 1.2 million for affordable housing. The request that's been made for 12 workspaces dedicated to existing tenants. Is that possible, or would it even be affordable with 1.2 million? Like there would be some pretty, that's not going to buy them, that's for sure.
Through the chair, I can't comment on the valuation of those live workspaces, but certainly the advice we've received is that we can't secure commercial replacement spaces and prioritize commercial businesses for those spaces. In terms of the City of Toronto Act stipulates that there has to be, where businesses are involved, we can't favor one business over another.
Okay, so we wouldn't be able to satisfy that request. We couldn't legally do it.
That's my understanding.
The way the wording is, and I don't mean to sound greedy here, the way the wording is for the 1.2 million in Ward 14 for affordable housing, how is that going to be interpreted with the ward boundary changes? Not that I'm suggesting, it's just that ward, it will now be Ward 18.
Through the chair.
Well, Ward 14 will be Ward 18, and this will be in Ward 19. Not that I would think that it should carry over to the new councillor, just how will it be interpreted? How will the language be interpreted?
As part of the work we're looking at in terms of Section 37, and certainly this isn't unique to just this property, we would be looking at where the Section 37 originated from and looking at the geographic proximity in relationship to that.
I imagine you may have some councillors, maybe not many, fighting over little bits of money. Fortunately, I know that Councillor Perks can probably spend that money before before the end of the term. Oh, we wouldn't have received it yet. We wouldn't have received it yet. On the rental relocation program, we've worked together on a couple of rental relocation programs. I'm just finding the language that's used in the report is difficult to translate. Could you give us an idea of what the rental replacement looks like in this case, and if it is beyond what is required through the Landlord-Tenant Act?
Certainly. So there's two components related to the tenant relocation and the rental replacement plan. One is that the 42 existing residential rental units will be replaced at a nearby location on ordinance with 51 replacement units. The other matters related to tenant relocation assistance, so additional compensation, a moving allowance, and so forth, is above and beyond what we typically secure for rental replacement and for tenant assistance. However, certainly tenants have raised that they don't feel this addresses fully the hardship they've endured.
On the parking and storage pieces, I've never seen those in a rental replacement before. How will it be interpreted on the predetermined amount? Who determines it? Do we have any, is there any discussion?
Through the chair, storage, lockers, and parking are fairly standard provisions that we do secure, and we do secure a rate according to what is reasonable that should be paid. Particularly for storage, it's a fairly low amount. Currently, the tenants do not have storage lockers, so that would be a new addition. Where parking is currently included in their rent, that would be dealt with separately, where they don't currently have parking, and then they would pay that new parking rate if they wanted to select that.
Thank you, Councillor Layton. That was your last question. We could open up for a second round.
Timing
I think, yeah, just because we have a very packed agenda, and that's the only reason. If the agenda was lighter, I'd say we can keep going. I wanted to just ask Linda McDonald if she had any additional remarks to your questions. She might.
Through you, Madam Chair, just one clarification on the reference to Ward 14. The report does say in the vicinity of the development, but if Community Council desired, they could adjust that wording to make it more clear in terms of where the funds would be spent.
But I was just curious about how it's going to be interpreted after the changes. So I have no intention of taking that money.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Perks, questions? You're okay? Then, are there any other members with questions of staff? No? Okay. I would just have a question regarding the heritage matter. And to heritage staff, can you provide a broad summary of the remarks and concerns that members of the Toronto Preservation Board had regarding the report, your report? Because they put forth an opinion that was different than your own.
Through you, Chair, just give me one moment. I was not at the meeting, so I'm going to ask one of my colleagues to come up and speak to it.
Thank you. It obviously doesn't have to be verbatim, but just captures the sentiments of the board members.
So generally, the board listened to the deputants and felt that the other properties on the site that had previously been reviewed by staff warranted another look. And that's reflected in the Toronto Preservation Board's recommendations to Community Council.
So because the recommendations are not, I mean, the recommendations are contained in a letter that came to this Community Council, can you give us a little bit more information on why they have a difference of opinion? Because they essentially turned your recommendations and looked to your recommendations and said, we're deleting those and we're adding our recommendations to refuse the alterations, whereas your report essentially approved the alterations, and they also requested that City Council would ask and direct you to further evaluate the heritage cultural value of 58 Atlantic. Can you help us reconcile, for those who are not at that Preservation Board meeting, why the board members took that position?
Well, although the Toronto Preservation Board did not express many concerns about the actual proposal, they just felt that, given what was said by the deputants at the meeting, that the buildings that were in question warranted a second look. And now that there was more information from the deputants on those buildings.
So just to summarize, their refusal, their request to refuse was not necessarily regarding the application for the development, but rather the fact that they believe that 58 Atlantic deserved an additional review.
That's right.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. Councillor Perks, question.
Yeah, so can I just, maybe I should ask legal staff, it's not possible at this point to both approve the city staff recommendation and the recommendation of the Preservation Services Board. They're actually contrary. That's my understanding.
Yes, they replace. My understanding also is that is correct.
Okay. In terms of the appeal rights of the applicant, the clock has ticked out. They could appeal today if they felt like it.
I believe that's true.
You believe or you know?
Well, I'm being advised that they're well
Maybe
past.
someone who knows can.
They're well past their date.
They're well past their appeal date. Okay. I think those are my questions.
Okay. Any other members with questions? Okay, seeing none, members to speak. Councillor Perks.
Okay, so I'm going to be moving the recommendations from staff to,
Just to clarify, on which item?
So we're going to speak to both at the same time?
Sorry, I guess we're speaking to the first item.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. Let me get some advice
All right.
here. Hold on, please.
This is a mess.
Yeah. So,
I know what he's going to.
so just to clarify, we are on item number 3.
Except.
So clerks are advising that I clarify to make sure that if there are any members who have questions of staff on report number 3.
We can't keep going back and forth. Can you not
So,
finish?
yeah, we're holding. Are there any members with questions of staff on item number 3? Okay, seeing none. So then members to speak on item number 3 first, and then we will speak on item number 4 afterwards. Councillor Perks.
Okay, so I'm going to be moving the staff recommendations, which are to approve the zoning bylaw amendment. This one has been certainly the hardest one that I've dealt with in my 11 years on council. And it's gone wrong from the start, and a lot of that's been the applicant's fault. At the very beginning of the process, the applicant attempted to illegally evict tenants. And just getting them to the table on that took months. And, you know, I wish the law had some kind of clause attached to our rental retention policy that allowed us to find the hell out of anybody who attempts to.
Councillor Perks, sorry to interrupt. Are you moving staff recommendations?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
at the
thank
beginning
you.
of my speech. All of them. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Unfortunately, it doesn't. Unfortunately, it doesn't. All we can do is to advise tenants of their rights when they're threatened with evictions, and do our best to get a decent award under the rental protection rules that we do have. We have exceeded the baseline for that issue. No, we haven't got the gold standard. I haven't been able to get the applicant to go any further than they'll go on this. And the confounding factor here is that although the Ontario Municipal Board years ago called these live-work units, We don't actually have anything called live-work in tenant law that protects them to the same floor-to-ceiling heights. And the floor-to-ceiling heights here are so generous that people, like some of the units actually function as if they were 2 stories. But for the way we measure, for the purposes of how we measure things, that additional, you know, sort of cubby where someone might sleep or do some work doesn't count as gross floor area. I mean, the holes here are just unbelievable. But we have the tools that we have. In terms of the heritage piece, it, again, you know, hats off to the community. From day one, they've been saying, no, there's more here than meets the eye. And they've done an awful lot of work to get interior photographs from the tenants. But I want to alert you to something. If we take the recommendations from the Preservation Board and say, let's go consider preserving this other piece, that doesn't guarantee the tenants anything. The 2 things do not relate to each other. You can go and preserve that other piece and have no further rights for the tenants at all. You're not preserving the use, you're preserving the walls. So to be clear about that, some of the deputations suggested the 2 things speak to each other. They don't. Additionally, you heard that the applicants are well past their date. And I'll tell you something, like I've seen staff working on this. I mean, I don't like to put it in these terms, but they've been carrying brass knuckles on this one. They have got every single thing out of the applicant that they could. The original building completely violated the overall policies we have for trying to maintain the height and character of the western part of Liberty Village to make sure that the carpet factory is the standard. So, and the applicant did not want to go along with that. They went behind staff's back, they went behind my back, they went to the mayor's office and said, look, this is employment. Give us a break. And I had to go and fix that problem. I am not thrilled with the behavior of the applicant on this one, but thinking reasonably about the fact that we have got a package for the tenants that is well above the minimum, even though it's not good enough because we don't have anything that lets us protect the floor-to-ceiling heights and the live-work use. We have brought them back into matching the planning goals we have for the overall area. We have an employment use, which, you know, if as has been pointed out, we are losing jobs within the city to the 905, which is creating all kinds of transportation problems, all kinds of problems in terms of our planning goals. We have protected what heritage staff have said over and over again, and I think members of the community agree, is the best heritage resource on the site, and got additional protections from it compared to what the original application was. And having been part of the negotiations in terms of what we can do for affordable housing generally in the area, Councillor Layton, I can tell you that sure isn't the position the applicant started from. So on balance, knowing this particular owner, and it wasn't the owner deputed today, and knowing his behavior, and knowing that if we take the recommendations of the Preservation Board, an appeal is filed tomorrow, and we put at risk every one of those important public policy goals that we have achieved on this, on the basis of we didn't get the very best tenant agreement that we've ever had in the history of the City of Toronto, and that the heritage resource, which is from the advice from staff, which is still the best one, is the protected one. I'm going to have to say the risks here, the downside here of trying to delay this process are just too great given the upsides in terms of what we've been able to achieve. I hope I never have another one like this. And if you're a developer out there who is going to try to evict tenants in order to get to yes, watch out, we're coming for you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Perks. Any other members with remarks? Councillor Layton.
Thank you very much, and I'll just speak very briefly to the item. I understand and appreciate how difficult this has been for Councillor Perks. I've met with residents on this file, and from the beginning, there were those that were trying to point to the additional heritage resources that were on site and the importance of protecting that resource within the context of Liberty Village. If you're down in Liberty, there's a very stark contrast between the old and the new, and that's something and a balance that our Heritage Department takes very seriously, and as does the local planners that have been involved on the files. I think that ultimately Councillor Perks and the rest of us are stuck in a really a terrible spot. We've got possibly heritage buildings that weren't recognized early enough in the process that may or may not have impacted the final outcome of this deliberation. But after 2 years, the developer is ready to move ahead, whether or not if we agree or not. And there's nothing more that I'd rather do than, given the experience that we've had with this developer on the site, than to stop it all now and just have at it out at the Ontario Municipal Board. Unfortunately, given that we have a positive staff report and at least a second heritage report that says that it's not recognizing the remaining buildings as significant, I don't think we'd get a better result than we currently are getting, and in fact we're probably opening ourselves up to get a worse result, something that is more in keeping with the original proposal. There has been significant change, I'd note, than what was first brought in, and I think it's in huge part because of the local planner and the local councillor that have been pushing for that. Those are two individuals I have a lot of faith in, and if what's coming forward is the best that we can negotiate, and the downside, the risk that we're opening ourselves up to is that significant, then I've got to trust that they've turned over every stone, that they've pushed as hard as we can push, because that's how I know these two people operate. So I'm prepared to support the local councillor in this effort. And I should say that my questions weren't because I wanted to go after the piggy bank of the affordable housing money, even though I think it's directed at precisely the correct thing, given that we couldn't do more for the commercial efforts on the site. I just wanted some clarity in how that will work going from one term to the next, because I think that'll be important in particular for Councillor Cressy, Councillor Troisi, Councillor Wong Tam, who have significant greater resources that will be transferred around those wards. So, thank you.
Okay. Any other members? Thank you, Councillor. Any other members with comments? And I would just like to acknowledge that we have the recommendations from Councillor Perk on item number 3 before us, recommendations of the staff report. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that carries. We are voting on TE 32.4. Are there any members who would like to speak to the matter? Councillor Perks.
I'd like to move to receive the recommendations.
To receive the recommendations? The recommendations are from the staff to approve the alterations. So we would have to move them. So if you don't want them before you, you just simply don't. Okay, are you ready, Councillor?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm advised the correct thing to do is to move to adopt the staff recommendations from Heritage staff, and that gets us to where we need to be.
Okay. Are there any questions of the mover? Seeing none, anyone else who'd like to speak? I'll just speak to this very, very quickly. As the city councilor who, I guess the only city councilor left who sits on the Toronto Preservation Board, I've had the honor of serving there for almost 8 years now. The board goes through a lot of careful consideration of every single item before them. And I think that members of the public who follow those discussions very closely will recognize that those board members are very interested in speaking only to the heritage matters. We are advised oftentimes at the Preservation Board to not speak to the planning and zoning matters. Even when there are alterations, we try to not get too far ahead on those particular subjects. And I want to just say that it's oftentimes very challenging for the local councillor as well as this body and city council when we do have conflicting reports and conflicting bits of information and conflicting advice, even from the advisory board, as known as the Preservation Board. And so the decision before us today, as a member of the Preservation Board, wearing those two hats, is I have to take that first hat off now. And I think it's very important to note that given the comments of Councillor Layton and Councillor Perks, is that this is now becoming a very, it becomes a decision around strategic moves to make sure that the communities are well protected and you get the very best outcome. It's a very uncomfortable place to be in. I've been in this place before. I will be in this place with my own community on 2 applications very shortly in the next 2 months moving forward. And I can tell you that it tears the local community apart. And it tears the local councillors apart, and oftentimes, even if members of this committee are not speaking, it is not a comfortable place to be in. Having said that, in order to win, if we can classify it as a win at the best of the day, at the end of the day, you do the very best you can with the hand that you're dealt with. So I will not be moving the recommendations of the Preservation Board, largely because of what I've heard from all the deputants today, and also because of the guidance from Councillor Perks on trying to do what's best for his local community. So if there are no other remarks, then we are ready to vote. Recommendation before us is to adopt the staff report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Councillor Fragedakis, you want to release some quick items?
Yes. So, and I'll speak to them very briefly. One is item
that's quick, right?
66, and it's the motion, staff have it. It's.
Can we hold on for a second? We just have to get ourselves organized here.
Sure.
Do we have your items? Or?
It's item 66 and 67. 66 is traffic control signals, Broadview Avenue. And I have a referral motion, and it's to refer it back to staff in transportation for further consideration and to report back to the July 4th meeting of Toronto and East Shore Community Council. If I may just say 2 words about it, it's very quick.
Councillor, we have a very large agenda. I don't generally do this.
I know, but other people have had they're more than 30 seconds to just speak quickly to their item.
You're referring the matter, so it's coming right back.
Well, I'm just want to explain to members of the public why I'm referring it back, because we have some disagreement in the community on the alternate recommendation put forward by staff instead of what the community had proposed, and the community and the staff and I need more time. So that's that one.
All those in favor of the referral motion before you? Any opposed? That carries, please. Councillor, item 67.
7 is traffic control signals, Mortimer Avenue and Dewhurst Boulevard North. I'm not sure why it's called traffic control signals, because I'm going to be moving to approve a pedestrian crossover located on Mortimer Avenue at Dewhurst Boulevard North, which is actually what the community had asked for in their original petition. So that's what I'll be moving.
All those in favor, recommendation before us. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. We're moving on to TE 32.5, 1209, 1232, 1234, 1238, 1246, 1250, and 1264 College Street zoning amendment final report. Are there any members of the public who are here to speak to this item? If you are a member of the public wanting to speak to any item on the agenda, please indicate yourself, and the clerks will add you to our speakers list. Seeing none, are there any members with questions of staff? Seeing none, this is a matter that's in Ward 18. Councillor Bailao is not in the room. Councillor McMahon, who has taken carriage of items, are not in the room. What I'd like to do is hold it down in their names, and I'll hold it for them, and we'll deal with them when they come back. TE 32.6, 366-370 Huron Street zoning amendment application, final report. Are there members of the public here to speak to this matter? Okay. I don't see any hands. Are there any members here who would like to ask questions of staff? Seeing none. Ward 20.
Thank you, and I'm going to move the staff recommendations, and I have a few comments on this.
Councillor Cressy, we don't have quorum if we don't, or we won't be able to vote when we don't have enough councillors in the seat. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. I'm going to move the staff recommendations, and I have a few words on this because this project goes back years and years and years. This has been developed, this final report and these laneway suites with a positive staff recommendation here by the Huron-Sussex Residents Organization, and I recognize one of our co-chairs here today, the University of Toronto, Evergreen, and our City of Toronto staff. And why it goes back years is that within the Huron-Sussex neighborhood, nearly 5 years ago, the local neighborhood association, along with the University of Toronto in the city, established an overarching neighborhood plan to guide ongoing change. It's a proactive plan which called for the introduction of laneway suites, even before we're having a conversation later today about them. And through extensive consultation, both on the development of that plan and the recommendations in front of us for the new suites, through extensive consultation, a plan has been identified that has received near unanimous support from all involved in the neighborhood, through the university, and at the staff level. This project is unique in one way, I would note, because around 85–90% of the land, Julie, how much, 90%? Around 90% of the land within the Huron-Sussex neighborhood is owned by a single property owner, the University of Toronto. And so not only have we collectively, with the neighborhood association and the city and the university, come up with a model for how to guide change, we're actually also in the process right now of establishing a housing strategy for how the university, as the 90% property owner in the area, will allocate their units. How do we deal with a housing strategy on the basis of age, of tenure, of income, of neighborhood stability, along with students and faculty and affordable housing? And so the opportunity here is more than just the introduction of intensification and housing, but rather from a comprehensive housing strategy. And I'll just close by saying later today we're going to be considering laneways in a much broader way, and I'm going to have a lot to say at that point related to affordability and sustainability and built form and others. But on this one, through an extensive process, we've reached a positive outcome, and I want to thank the Residents Association and the University of Toronto and our City of Toronto staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Are there any other members with remarks? Okay, seeing none. I just want to personally thank Councillor Cressy for all his work on this particular file, and also to the University of Toronto and the applicant and the local community. It's very exciting, I have to say. I wasn't directly involved, but just watching this particular application go through a lot of keen interest, just because it's exactly the type of infill housing I think that we need more of in the city. So I'll keep my remarks short, but I just want to let you know how grateful I am to see such good planning and great design. Thank you. So recommendation of the staff report is before us. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.7, 145 to 149 Chaplin Crescent, zoning amendment application. There's a final report. Ward 22, sorry. Members of the public here to speak to this matter? Seeing none. Members of the committee with questions of staff? Seeing none. Members to speak? Councillor Matlow.
It was brought to my attention this morning that there is still some work to do, and staff has requested that I defer this for a 1-month cycle. So that is what I'm doing. I understand that we're going to have a fairly light agenda next month, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. Okay. Motion to defer before us. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.8, 150 Eglinton Avenue East, zoning amendment application, final report. There is a speaker registered here. I'd like to call Bob Murphy. Bob, welcome. Nice to see you. You'll have 5 minutes on the clock on your left-hand side over here on the wall when you're ready.
One of the maxims of equity is equity looks on that as done, which ought to be done. This application was originally for 39 floors. Now it's at 46. This is not a settlement. It's a capitulation. If OPA 231 was approved by the minister's approval is consistent with the minister's prerogatives under the Places to Grow Act. Estate growth cannot be just residential. The issue here is not Madison's property rights, but rather Madison's obligation under the very law that gives it so much density. Accepting the density means accepting the autocratic nature of the Places to Grow Act. The planner's report cites Section 2 of the Planning Act, while Section 2 also refers to adequate provision and distribution of educational, health, social, and recreational facilities. The statute law requires that these be adequate and in place. Midtown in Focus, a mere unfunded study, is not sufficient for approval of this project. Section 1B of the Places to Grow Act speaks to a rational and balanced approach to growth, the very definition of OPA 231. This developer, having just built 2 30-story plus towers across the street, has put more than their fair share of stress on our infrastructure. Now they get to build 46 more floors on a settlement of questionable planning merit. The developer cannot cite precedent, as the growth plan does not confer property rights, and there is no right to exceed growth targets or to exceed the capacity of infrastructure. Councillor Robinson, for one, has expressed twice in North Toronto a point of view on this that seems different from the point of view of the planners. If the tests of Section 2 planning, all of it, and Section 1B Places to Grow have not been met, ministerial consent would be necessary to exceed provincial policies. The minister cannot tell Madison what to do, but he can tell council what to do, and his approval of OPA 231 is a clear enough indication of what the minister wants. The OMB or lab cannot consider this because it has no clear instruction on what it is supposed to do. If the board cannot interpret the growth plan in terms of existing infrastructure, then neither can it interpret the growth plan in terms of the excesses of the provisions of Section 2 planning or 1B Places to Grow. The only good thing that can be said about this application is that unlike 110, 120, 117, 127 Broadway, there aren't 4 buildings full of tenants whose affordable housing will be lost for 4 35-floor towers. But 150 Eglinton East is a big, dominating institutional building. The Economic Development Department should become involved in a better plan for this building. This building should remain on Eglinton. In terms of design terms, it actually makes the street. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Are there any questions for the speaker? No? Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public here to speak to the matter? Welcome, Adam Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of council. I'm here on behalf of the applicant and wanted to give you just a brief summary of why we are in support of the staff report before you, and it's because it's been a process of just over 3 years where an applicant who came in with an application worked long and hard with the councillor, the planning staff, urban design staff. We had help because of changes we made from transportation and engineering staff who were involved in eliminating an access on Eglinton. And in addition to that, just before I show you the design, this is an applicant who was asked to consider Midtown in Focus, which came after the fact. And in response to the comment that was received just recently from the speaker before me, 2 important things have happened. Number 1, for OPA 231, while under appeal, our client agreed to 100% office replacement on the site. That was requested and agreed to by our client. Number 2, one of the main issues that the city has had in this area is creating a proper greenscape in front of and setbacks in front of these buildings. So if the existing building were to stay, we wouldn't have that. This applicant was asked to create a setback on Eglinton 12 meters of the Midtown in Focus, which came after the application, and they agreed. So if you take a look just at a couple of slides I'll show you, this will show you our green line looking east and green line looking west down Eglinton, and I'd say that it's the first applicant who's agreed to fully comply with that request. This is a site that I think is, in terms of the context, is in the Young Eglinton area, and as you're aware, is designated for mixed-use development. And again, with OPA 231, we've got even a little bit more than 100% office replacement as requested. These are the height maps in the area that show it's actually in keeping with recently approved heights. And again, this has not been appealed. I know there was a comment that it's a settlement. This was not appealed. This was a 3-year plus process where an applicant has actually agreed to the revisions and changes asked for. This is sort of the context, trying to highlight our building in orange so that you would be able to see it. And these are some of the site plan comparisons that show you that we previously, again, had access on Eglinton, worked with your transportation staff and engineering staff to take all access off of Eglinton to create a proper streetscape. And that streetscape includes the 12-meter setback on Eglinton in accordance with the Midtown in Focus requirements. And in addition to that, there were significant changes to the outline of the original building to the final resubmission, also to follow the green line requirements of the city. And then just showing you some of the design elements in terms of the podium. And again, most importantly, the base, which shows you that green line compliance. So this is an application that's been through a fulsome process for about 3.5 years, that's responded to every input that we've received on office replacement, setbacks, the green line, and the Midtown in Focus policies, which are not yet in force and effect, but we treated them as if they were because we were asked to. And this is an applicant who, in response to the cooperation, supports the staff report, and hopefully you will also recommend adoption of that staff report. And in addition, we agreed to a Section 37 contribution, which is $1 million contribution on top of office replacement, on top of providing that POPs, on top of everything else we've agreed to. So we would commend the report recommendations to you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Thank you very much for your remarks. Are there any questions of the speaker? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Members, are there any questions of staff? Seeing none, members to speak. Councillor Mallow.
Madam Chair, I move the recommendations. I'll just briefly say that we've been going through, over the past few years, we've been going through the Midtown in Focus study to do something that should have been done 20 years ago, maybe even 30 years ago, which is to put a focus on necessary social services and infrastructure and the kind of usage that we'd like to see in whatever grows in the Yonge and Eglinton area, rather than always reacting to new condo developments. And we've had significant concerns, as you've seen recently with 1951 Yonge Street. We've raised concerns about the ability to provide water to the building, along with adequate transit and school capacity in the area. There are significant concerns, and our generation is playing catch-up, really, with decisions that have been made in the past. But we're doing it, and we're working on it. One of the core priorities we have for Yonge and Eglinton that connects directly to the approval of this development is that we need to see through to fruition our public realm plan. We need to see through to fruition the green line plans that we have on streets such as Sudan, such as Eglinton and others, where we create better, improved public realm and places for community rather than just development, and that's part of this plan. The other thing that we have been vigilant about is pressing for 100% office replacement. I believe the city dropped the ball on 90 Eglinton West. I think we really screwed up, and we undermined our own policy of 100% office replacement. And what we've been doing at Yonge and Eglinton, and we've had successes, the past 3 challenges we've had to this goal is to over and over and over again achieve 100% office replacement, because we want a complete community. We often talk about complete streets. We also want a complete community. We want a Yonge and Eglinton that isn't just a vertical bedroom suburban community. We want a balance of work, residential, and play so that people can walk to work and not try to jam themselves in on an overcrowded subway or get into their car and contribute to the congestion we already have. We want to improve people's health and quality of life. We want a complete community. Full officer replacement is important to that because it also creates jobs, which also contributes to our quality of life. So ultimately, I guess to conclude, ironically, this is one of the very few development proposals that I've ever had an initial meeting about early on, where I literally walked out of the room because the applicant wasn't willing to do anything that I just listed as far as our achievements. But I want to give a lot of credit to our planner and our team together, where we achieved, I think, something pretty remarkable from where we began, and that's why I'm willing to walk back in the room and have a seat and try to achieve a resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Matlow. Anyone else who would like to speak? Seeing none, the recommendations of the staff report are before us. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. Our next item is TE 32.9, 155 Wellesley Street East, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment and rental housing demolition application. This is the final report. There are 2 registered speakers, possibly more. I'd like to call Larry Titus to speak. Larry, are you here? Oh, okay. Welcome, Larry. And following Larry, just to get you ready, is Caitlin Allen. Okay. Larry, welcome. You have 5 minutes. The clock is on your left-hand side, and I'll start it when you're ready.
Certainly. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for this opportunity to voice my concerns about the redevelopment of 155 Wellesley Street East. I originally attended the public consultation meeting on this project back in February to see if the design of the new building would reflect the nearby Century homes on Homewood Avenue. It was very apparent from the presenters at the meeting that absolutely no thought had been given to the matter. Indeed, the architect's representative stated that the client asked us for a glass box, so we gave them a glass box. After the meeting, I wrote of my concerns to both the city planner, Jason Brander, and my councillor, Councillor Longtam. Both have been very kind in subsequent months in replying to my questions and comments. Everyone has explained why this particular redevelopment project does not meet the criteria for the design to reflect the local architectural heritage. And I do understand the conflict between public will and available legislative tools. My own background is in archaeology, and this is for us an ongoing battle in cultural resource management. Nevertheless, here we have a redevelopment project which will be occupied by a medical facility to be built meters from the former residence of Dr. Frederick Banting, the co-creator of insulin. The partner in this project from the very start is St. Michael's Hospital, and they'll be operating this medical facility. It's frankly incomprehensible to me how one could possibly propose a more compelling argument to have the new building's design reflect, acknowledge, and honor that local heritage. While the site may not meet the technical letter of heritage legislation, I urge this council to request design changes to be made at the site plan approval stage, as Councillor Wong-Tam's office has suggested. The council already has my written comments on this redevelopment proposal, so you will know that my concern is also with the overall suitability of the relocation of St. Michael's Hospital mental health and addictions facility to this site from a community safety perspective. Personally, I've never seen any problems at the 410 Sherburne Street site, and my sense is that other elements in that area may well be the source of problematic behaviors. Nonetheless, since there was some concern expressed at the public consultation meeting about discarded needles and such, I strongly urge this council to request and consider Toronto Police Service statistics on the frequency and types of calls to police for that facility. The adjacency of 4 vulnerable populations to the proposed site demands our caution here before any decision is made. Finally, City staff's report indicates that they are supportive of the proposal. Indeed, Transportation Services suggests that a single access point on Homewood Avenue for all vehicles to and from the site will actually improve safety by avoiding the bike lane on Wellesley Street. I honestly remain skeptical that creating a single conflict point within a designated school zone is really the wise option here. Mr. Brander does acknowledge that the proposed use of the site serves a larger population than that which was intended in the apartment neighborhoods policies, but that the proposed use will provide a tangible benefit and improvement to the community. I sincerely hope that his optimism proves correct. I do trust that city staff's assessments, as far as they go, but I also trust that this council will consider all views in this matter, and in the words of the official plan, whether this proposal actually does fit in, respect, and improve the existing context of the neighborhood. Thank you for listening. Questions?
Thank you very much. You're about to do my job. Are there any questions for the member? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. Our next speaker is Caitlin Allen. Caitlin, welcome. Five minutes when you're ready.
Hello. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of Community Council. My name is Caitlin Allen. I'm from Bouse Fields, Inc., and we are the planning consultants for the applicant with regards to this property. On behalf of the applicant, we filed this application in September in order to permit this infill development on the property, which, as you've heard, is to develop a new 2-story medical facility and a 1-story pharmacy at the base of the existing apartment building. So the lower 2 levels will be renovated and expanded to facilitate this development. And also, as you've heard, the medical facility will be operated by St. Michael's Hospital and will replace the existing center at 410 Sherburne Street. I wanted to be brief and indicate that we are in support of staff's recommendations for the approval of the proposed development. Over the past 9 months, we've worked very closely with staff on the applications and received comments which have been incorporated into the refined proposal, which forms the basis of the final report. In our opinion, this represents good planning as, among other reasons, it will ensure the local community will continue to have access to the important service of St. Mike's. It will introduce a compatible use on the site that will support the achievements of a complete community. It will enhance the safety, amenity, and animation of the site and the adjacent public realm. And it won't negatively impact the tenants in the existing building, in the existing rental units. So we're going to continue to work with city staff to refine the bylaws to ensure they're consistent with the plans that staff have reviewed and are in support of. And I also just wanted to voice my appreciation for all the work that staff have done and put into this application. And I request that you adopt their recommendations, subject to the motion, which I also think will be before you. So I'm here with the applicant to answer any questions, and I'm also happy to respond more directly to the earlier comments of Mr. Titus as required.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions of the deputy? Okay, seeing none, I just have a quick question since you've opened it up.
Okay.
The previous speaker before you raised a couple of concerns. One is around the contextual, I guess, appropriateness of the urban design that is put forward in the application versus and how it relates to the heritage homes, some of the heritage homes, especially on Homewood Avenue. How would you respond to his concern?
Well, I'd certainly like to also defer to staff on this as well, because we have been working with them on the urban design component. But from a heritage perspective, the site, as Mr. Titus has said, is not adjacent to any heritage designated properties of concern. And we were informed at the very first meeting that this wasn't something that would necessarily need to inform our proposal. I think that the design has responded contextually to the adjacent conditions, particularly along the Wellesley Street East corridor, and has been really carefully designed to fit within the space that is around the existing 18-story apartment building in a way that is in an appropriate built form.
Okay, and then my follow-up question, and this will be my last question, with respect to the permitted use or the requested use, the applicant, the new tenant that will be coming into this new addition is currently a neighbor in the community. Do you believe that they are an appropriate type of use, and given the fact that they're in the neighborhood, but also given the concerns that the applicant before you, sorry, the deputy before you spoke about?
Yes, I think that it's a facility that's currently serving the local population, which needs a new facility to host their programs from. And I think that it has operated in a compatible way in that location for many years, and it will continue to do so in this new location. From a safety perspective, there is one thing that I wanted to highlight in that it will be secure. There will be no insecure accesses between any of the non-residential uses and the residential uses in the building today.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Are there any other members with questions of the speaker? Okay, seeing none, are there any other members of the public here to speak to this matter? Seeing none, any members of Community Council with questions of staff? I don't see any, then I will just ask one question, which is basically the same question I asked of the speaker to clarify the comments of the prior speaker. Your position as staff with respect to concerns around this particular application and the physical alterations to the building, does it have heritage impact? How does it sit along the street with some of the heritage properties on Homewood?
Yes, Madam Chair. So when the application was submitted, it was circulated to Heritage staff, and I followed up with Heritage staff. There are heritage adjacencies, the school across the street on the west side and some of the houses on Homewood to the south. However, most of the massing is on the Wellesley Street portion. There's a number of new developments that are ongoing at 159 Wellesley. There are some mixed-use buildings there as well. So from a design perspective, we were satisfied that the impact on heritage was limited. However, we're still in discussions with the applicant on the site plan process. So if there are things that we can incorporate, we will look at doing that.
Okay, thank you very much. And with respect to the follow-up question, the intended tenant that's going to be going into the new addition is currently a neighbor and a service provider already in the neighborhood.
Yes.
Do you have any concerns based on what the first speaker spoke about with respect to the intended use? Number one, is it permitted? Number two, is it an appropriate use?
No, Madam Chair. When looking at the policy framework, and it's discussed a little bit in the report with respect to healthy neighborhoods, community services are encouraged within existing apartment buildings. This use is established in the neighborhood already. It's 350 meters away. Staff don't have any issues with that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Any members to speak? Seeing none, then I would just quickly want to thank all the deputants for coming out. I'd also like to move the recommendations in the staff report to approve the application before us. The concerns that were raised by the first speaker, I think, are quite honestly legitimate. There aren't a lot of speakers that came out from the community, despite the fact that this particular application is an addition to a building that is already there. There's 116 households that are living in this building. We have very little correspondence, very little communication from that community that is most directly impacted. I think that is largely a testament to the applicant and the property owner, who has communicated very clearly, I believe, with the tenants, because if that did not happen, we would be hearing from them certainly. And also just the fact that we have all sorts of services provided in the community, and this is one of those services, a facility that's operated off-site from the St. Mike's main campus, and we have received, I think in my office, no complaints ever about the operation of that facility as it sits right now on Sherbourne. Having them relocate to a modern facility with a much more accessible retail operation is, I think, the appropriate move, and I think it's actually very welcome for all the service users of this facility and this service, that they are going to be quite relieved knowing that their service provider is going to stay in the neighborhood. So that is a very positive thing. I will look forward to working with the staff on the site plan to make sure that it responds to some of the concerns that I believe were legitimately raised by the first speaker, and I want to thank him for that. But I think we are more than ready to just go ahead and approve this particular application before us. If there are no other comments, then we have the recommendations of the staff report before us. Oh, sorry, I have to move a technical amendment, sorry. And I don't have quorum. Can I ask Councillor Perks and Councillor Cressy to take their seat? We can take a vote, and I apologize. Sorry. Yeah, so before we move the recommendation of the staff report, I have to move this technical amendment provided by the planning staff. There's just two or three quick adjustments on here, and it is technical in nature. Some quick changes to the measurements, and in addition to an additional recommendation as noted number 6. Can you scroll down so the members can see it, please? It looks very long, but it's actually not. It's very straightforward. That is correct. So it's a difference between 100 square meters and 100.8 square meters. And it is significant. Okay, and there's something else in there, but if there are no questions of the mover, I would like to move the motion to amend. All those in favor? Any opposed? Item as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. So we have one more item here before we head to the big one that's going to take up a lot of energy, and I think we're in for a very exciting discussion. TE 32.10, 1001 Queen Street East zoning amendment application of final report. We do have one registered speaker, Robert Drag-G-Civic. Oh, you're here. Welcome.
I just thought I'd try and use up the time effectively and place myself in the chair. Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of Community Council. My name's Robert Dragicevic. I'm with WND Associates. We're the planning consultants at 33 Developments, Inc. Simply put, we're here to support the staff recommendations for a building that is probably best described in the planning staff report on the first page as being a modest and incremental proposal. It's at the southwest corner of Pape and Queen, and this building has been designed from the ground up to respect the setback requirements that were established in the Leslieville Urban Design Guidelines. As well as...
Sorry for the interruption. Please continue.
No problem. Working from the street up with staff, and we do appreciate the efforts of planning and urban design staff. We've made every effort to make this particular proposal fit into the community context. So it's a 6-story building, 4 stories with a step back to the upper 2 floors. It's a 16-unit building, 15 2-bedroom units and 1 3-bedroom unit. I think Community Council would be interested to know that the unit sizes themselves range between 1,000 to 1,600 square feet. The intention here is to bring family-suitable apartment accommodation into the Leslieville area. And my client's very much a promoter of that. He lives in the area, believes in the area. And of course, in the base of the building, it will be a mixed-use building with retail at grade, about just under about 2,800 square feet of space. So we think that we've done a great job in matching the requirements from the guidelines, We would ask for council's support. Again, I'd like to thank staff for their efforts. Councillor Fletcher was very helpful in initiating a quick community consultation, which allowed us to move this forward to you in a relatively straightforward fashion. And I'm obviously available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your deputation. Are there any members here with questions of the Speaker? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Are there any other members of the public here to speak to the matter? Okay, seeing none. Because the matter is in Councillor 30, in Ward 30, Councillor Fletcher is not in the room. By way of courtesy, I'd like to hold the decision-making and the questions of staff portion down, and should she be coming back soon, we will bring this matter back for discussion and for decision. So we're going to hold that. And now I guess we are at TE 32.11, changing lanes, the City of Toronto's review of laneway suites, city-initiated official plan amendment, and zoning amendment final report. There are many speakers on this item. There are also a number of correspondence and communications that have been received by City Clerk. I want to let everyone know who's registered here to speak today that there is a Councillor Cressy, who will be moving a 1-month deferral motion with instructions to staff to further do some additional work. What that means is that those members who are speaking on this matter today will not be permitted to speak to the same matter when it comes back in 30 days or so. So you may choose to speak today, or you may choose to speak the next time around. So we will let you decide on that. There was also a request by Councillor Bailao, who has been a big champion of this initiative, as you are all aware, that she would like to ensure that all decision-making, at the very least, is to be dealt with after lunch, which we will most likely need that time to finish all the deputations.
If I may, on a point of order, given that there are a significant number of speakers, there are a number of 11 a.m. items with no speakers associated with them, and perhaps that would allow some of the staff that are waiting to go back and do the rest of their job. We could just quickly run through the ones with no speakers at least.
So I think that's a very good suggestion, Councillor Layton, and I'm happy to take some 11 o'clock items, only because we know that there will be a holding down of the changing lanes item anyways, because Councillor Bailao would like to be here when decisions are finally made, and I know she would like to speak to it. And so what I would do at this moment is, before we hear from the deputants for changing lanes, I would invite members, you can take maybe an opportunity to do some quick releases if there are any, or we can proceed right to 11 a.m. items that don't have registered. Okay? To do, and generally it's not this confusing, but today it is, because there's so many different requests to do things when someone is in a room or someone's not in a room. I'll stay with you for the rest of the meeting. However, we need to have certain bodies in the room to take care of certain items. I'd like to hold down item number 11, which is changing lanes. We're going to proceed to TE 32.12, Queen Street West between Dufferin Street and Roncesvalles Avenue, restaurant study, request for directions report. There is one registered speaker on this matter, Rick Amos. Yes, Rick, we would like to welcome you to the front of the room. It's your opportunity to speak. Okay, and you'll have 5 minutes when you're ready.
Okay, it's quicker than I thought. I'm just waiting for number 11. So I'm here to speak about the restaurant study that was done on Queen Street West. Basically, what it did was to try to deal with the changing makeup of the streetscape from a daytime culture to a nighttime culture. Up until a year and a half ago, I lived directly across from where most of the activity happened. which was from Brock to Dufferin. So I would like to see the 25% item maintained within this bylaw, and I'm going to speak as to why my rationale is that it stays there. I think the report that was created by the company 360 Collective attempted to try to do a report. I think part of the issue in that report illustrated that just given the changes in the community retail, they weren't able to actually analyze what the repercussions of that 25% saturation bylaw was. So I don't think that report actually illustrated the issue around that saturation bylaw. So that's one of my reasons for it not for being retained in the bylaw. The other issue has to do with the Alcohol and Gaming Commission. The City of Toronto doesn't have the responsibility of issuing licenses. That's with the provincial body. And up until a couple of years ago, there's a new regulation in place, which is an as of right for businesses. So any business, not just one that serves food, can get a liquor license. So in my neighborhood, we now have a barber shop that has a liquor license. And great that I can get a haircut and have a beer. But it still doesn't deal with the licensed establishments. This whole process of dealing with saturation and concentration of activities on a street has been something that's been going on for a long time. When the community first got involved in dealing with the issue around licensed establishments and the overflow that was created and how it was affecting the neighborhood, we tried to figure that out. How are we going to deal with this? And so the city has done numerous reports on Ossington, on Dundas, on Queen Street, on College. And what we realized, what was coming forward from the city was a sort of a cookie cutter approach to how to deal with this. So the study that was being done on Queen Street in Parkdale looked exactly like the rest of them, except they changed the name and the street location. So we were kind of disappointed with that. So we went out and said, okay, were these other areas, were they benefited from this change? And what we realized talking to other community groups and resident groups in the neighborhood was no, it didn't affect any change. It just basically stalled things for a year and a half while the study was done. So we went, oh, that's not a good thing. So the community started doing some research. And one of the things we did was we looked elsewhere. Who else has saturation bylaws? Well, we found out LA has a saturation bylaw. Berlin has a saturation bylaw. London, England, the list goes on, of places that have figured out how to deal with this issue of neighborhoods and alcohol. So we approached the city, and they said, well, that's a different jurisdiction. It doesn't apply in Toronto, Ontario. So we did some more work, and we found out that Byward Market in Ottawa has a bylaw. Stratford has a bylaw. Niagara Falls has a bylaw. So we approached the city and said, no, what you've got now doesn't work. We want something better. And out of that came this solution. So I think that solution should stay in play. I appreciate that we would like to approach it, review it again in 5 years, but I think we could do that and continue the bylaw in its place as it still stands. And I understand that it will go towards the OMB because it's already been objected to. So I would like to see it stay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your remarks. Are there any members with questions for the speaker? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Are there any other members of the public here to speak to this matter? Seeing none, members of the Community Council with questions of staff? Seeing none, members to speak? Councillor Perks.
So many of you on the Community Council will remember this. This was a very, very interesting piece of work that we did in Parkdale. 8 or 10 years ago, we were seeing liquor license applications every month. And we had one stretch of Parkdale from basically Dufferin to Brock, which was unbelievable. Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, you couldn't walk on the sidewalks because there were so many people who were going to one establishment to pre-drink, then they were going to another establishment to listen to live music and drink, and then they were going to another establishment after that to drink. And, you know, I have nothing against someone having a beer or a glass of wine or even two on occasion. But this was a whole different thing. People were coming in from all over the Greater Toronto area to basically go to what was turning into the new nightclub district. And that had several consequences. I had people who lived above some of these places who literally would go stay with family and friends every weekend so their kids could get enough sleep to be able to go to school on Monday morning or to do their homework. I had people who were having windows smashed. I had people who were getting urine and feces on their front lawns. It was completely out of control. And the other consequence was that that whole stretch of Queen Street was dark during the day. And the few businesses that were trying to stay open had no foot traffic because the restaurants wouldn't open until 10 p.m. And the correct way to deal with it would be to have some kind of control over the concentration of liquor licenses. And we tried hard to find a way to do that. You might remember Councillor Layton and I very famously at one point said the city managed to get through council a provision that the city will not approve any liquor license unless the local member of provincial parliament signed off, which they all refused to do. So we had this period of several months where no one could open a restaurant.
It was bonkers.
It was bonkers. And it forced the creation of a task force between the city and the province to try to deal with this issue of overconcentration of drinking establishments. And boy, did we work hard. Councillor Nunziata, Councillor Palacio, Councillor Layton and I went up to Queen's Park and told them about the problems we were having in some neighbourhoods in Toronto. And they said, "We hear you, councillors. We sure do hear you. We'll do something." And after 2.5 years of having meetings with staff from the Alcohol and Gaming Commission, I'm happy to report they did absolutely nothing. In fact, they've made it worse. They've made it worse. I now have, as Rick mentioned, in this stretch of Queen Street, a barber shop that serves drinks and stays open until 2 a.m. Because, you know, who doesn't want to get drunk and go get their hair cut at 1 o'clock in the morning? I'm not seeing a lot of hands go up. Maybe Councillor Layton, I don't know.
If I had any hair.
If you had any hair. The province simply does not understand that the main streets in Toronto, a key thing in what they do is to act as an anchor and a resource for the local neighborhood, and we were losing that role. So we brought this backwards tool of controlling restaurants, because they won't let us control drinking, in. And if you read the staff report, it achieved its goals. And if you walk Queen Street these days, you will see it has achieved its goals. Places that were late-night dancing establishments are now restaurants. Places that were pre-drinking establishments are now restaurants. We've managed to bring back the daytime traffic on the street. And staff have looked at this and compared it to other areas, and they've said, we're finding that for a whole bunch of reasons in the City of Toronto, these kinds of neighbourhoods are finding their balance again. So we recommend that because it does create a real administrative burden on legitimate restaurants, which it does, that we take our foot off the brakes and come back in 5 years and see if that balance that we've reachieved is a permanent balance. And I think that's a legitimate way to go, because where we're really going to solve this problem, and I'm glad Rick brought up the Byward Market. I actually had the local councillor from the Byward Market phone me yesterday saying, how's that going? Our problems are getting worse. So I see the time, so I'm going to encourage you all to support this recommendation with an undertaking that staff are going to be keeping their eye on it, and we will get a report on this in the future, but with a renewed commitment as a council to bringing the rules around late-night drinking to heel. We have an opportunity in that I understand the province is going to be reviewing the AGCO rules as part of their review of the cannabis rules. So maybe that's our window to try to get the province to understand that handing out liquor licenses like candy can have a negative impact on neighborhoods.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Are there, you have questions from Councillor Davis?
As I recall, Councillor Perks, one of the other objectives was to try and maintain not just restaurants instead of bars, but also to look at encouraging, I guess by default, other uses like hardware stores or bakeries or other kinds of business establishments. And I don't see any reference to what the findings were for other uses. And I know I probably should have asked staff.
That's okay. So we did hire one of the premier firms in North America that looks at how commercial areas succeed and don't succeed. And they did a study of this area, adjacent main streets, and comparator main streets in other parts of the city. And we found that in this area, employment, not just in restaurants went up, and in other categories went up as well. And I can tell you anecdotally, you don't have their full report here, there's a summary of it here, and I can make sure staff forward the full report. I can also just tell you anecdotally, like this is a stretch of Queen Street I walk virtually every day, that reinvigoration of the daytime businesses in a variety of business categories has improved. So its service to the local neighborhood has improved as well. But the one thing they did find that I think is worth noting is the trend towards having neighborhood main streets turn into these sort of party areas is down across the city. So we both achieved our goal of reducing the late night drinking and achieved our goal of reinvigorating other forms of business in the area. And staff feel that if you look, there's a complicated process. If you want to open a restaurant, you have to go through a zoning check that you normally wouldn't have to go to because of this bylaw, and it does create some difficulties. So their advice is, given that the problem seems to have gone away, and given that we're seeing a decline generally across the city, why don't we remove this and review it in 5 years?
Right. I just was wanting to understand the other types of uses and whether there were any findings.
I'm just trying to be thorough because I know that you appreciate thorough answers.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any other members with questions of the councillor who's moved the staff recommendations? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of the staff recommendations? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. And thank you, councillor and the staff for their work. Councillor McMahon, on a point of personal privilege.
Sure. So I'm not sure if everyone heard, but if anyone is here for the Laneway Suites item, we're going to hear it after lunch at 12, after 1:30. So if you want to leave early for lunch and just have a bit longer of a lunch break, or if you're just scintillated by our every word and conversation here today, feel free to stay. But otherwise, I want you to have a longer lunch in the sunshine and come back after 1:30. 1:30. Thank you. I just wanted to be mindful of that.
Thank you very much, Councillor McMahon. I just want to see if we can clear some of the earlier items. Councillor Fletcher, you have an item from time 10 o'clock, TE 32.10, 1001 Queen Street East, zoning amendment application, final report. How would you like to proceed?
I do, and I'm just moving the approval, Chair, and also turning over a memorandum of understanding between the building owner next door, which was the first heritage building that had been designated on Queen Street. And
Councillor Fletcher, I'm just going to hold your remarks there. The clerks are looking a little bit perplexed. I don't think they have what they need.
I'm just going, no, I'm not turning. I'm just speaking. I'm doing exactly what I said. I'm going to approve that, and I'm speaking, and I'm going to give this to staff once I say what it is.
Oh, I see, okay.
No, it's not. But I'll start again then.
Yeah, so you're moving the staff.
I'm moving the staff recommendations as is, and
with no amendments.
No amendments,
Okay, thank you.
as I
Please
indicated
proceed.
earlier. Thank you.
You're 5 o'clock, sorry, 5 minutes, sorry.
5 o'clock? I've
No,
got till
you're
5?
5 minutes,
That's great.
please proceed.
And having a communication between the next-door neighbor, which was the first heritage designation on all of Queen Street, and the developer, and it's one regarding light and everything else, and I'm going to turn this over today to planning staff so it can be considered in the site plan. And with that, I'm moving the approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. All those in favor, recommendations in the staff report moved before us. Any opposed? That
And
carries.
I'd like to introduce my new items as well, Chair.
Thank you. Hang on tight.
I'm hanging.
Well, we have a long day. I just want to see if there's anything else that we can clear up first. Okay, so motion to add items, new business, TE 32.89 to TE 32.93. Councillor Cressy, all those in favor?
Sorry.
Any opposed? Added, and it will be circulated. Councillor Cressy, I believe you have some quick items now? You have quick items? Okay, let's start with Councillor Cressy and then move to Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Speaker. Which I'll wait until staff are ready.
Councillor Cressy, please proceed.
Item which I held down, item TE 32.70, traffic calming speed humps, Finale Street. I can move the alternate recommendations, which is to install, and I'm happy to release that. And move
Item number again, sorry?
The item number is TE 32.70, traffic calming speed humps, Finale Street. I'd like to move the alternate recommendations, which is to install them.
Motion is before us. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you.
Okay, I have, and then the other one I can do, which is item TE 32.44, Davenport Guiding Principles. This is the new Davenport Triangle Planning Study. I have a motion, which is to direct the General Manager of Transportation Services to work with the community in our office to design and implement the public realm and circulation plan. And with that amendment, I can move the staff recommendations to endorse the plan, and I want to thank the local neighborhood and our planning staff for 2.5 years of hard work to get to this point. 10 years too late, but important to get it done.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Cressy. All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Item as amended. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you, and congratulations to local councillor for all his good work.
I will, if I can, it seems like Councillor Fragedakis and myself are not going to actually be physically present in the room at the same time, and in the interests of clearing this
There's
off.
at least,
Pardon me?
there is potentially more time to have a meeting after lunch.
Except it's going to be very busy. So I will clear off number 1 and simply do that on a simple vote.
Okay.
And if she feels strongly, we will.
Okay, so it's TE 32.1, naming of a public lane south of Danforth Avenue, extending easterly from Carlaw Avenue, then southerly to Harcourt Avenue. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you, Councillor. Anything else? Any other quick releases? Okay. Seeing none, we can probably move to TE 3213, 306, 310, 314, and 326 Davenport Road, zoning amendment request for directions report. There is a registered speaker, David Nelligan. Please, welcome. And when you're ready, you'll be given 5 minutes on the clock.
I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Designers Walk, Inc. and Citizen Greybook BG Limited Partnership. Our client and their consultants have had an opportunity to review the staff's report. And we do note that within that staff report is evidence that our clients have engaged in several meetings and discussions with the local community groups, including the Davenport Area Triangle Residents Association and the Annex Residents Association, as well as several meetings with city planning staff and urban design staff. Our clients remain willing to continue to work with city staff and the interested stakeholders to resolve and or narrow some of the issues that are existing in the staff report, in the hopes that we can avoid a lengthy and costly local planning appeal tribunal hearing. Unfortunately, the recommendations included in the staff report do not include any direction to the city's solicitor or appropriate staff to continue those discussions or potentially engage in formal mediation, whether that's before the LPAT or by a third party. So I'm appearing before you this morning simply to request an amendment to those recommendations to include a recommendation directing city staff and the solicitor to continue those negotiations and participate in mediation if directed by the local planning appeal tribunal.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Are there any questions of the speaker? Seeing none, thank you. And if there are no more members of the public who are here to speak to this matter, are there members with questions of staff? No? Members to speak?
Thank you, and I will move the staff recommendations, which is to direct the city solicitor and appropriate staff to attend the tribunal to oppose the application in its current form. This is a standard request for directions report, and nothing at all precludes staff or the local community or the applicant, for that matter, from making changes as we go through the planning tribunal process, and I would encourage that to take place.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cressy. All those in favor? Recommendations? Thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none, that carries. TE 32.14, 647, 663 to 665 King Street West, 69-73 Bathurst Street, and 58-60 Stewart Street. Zoning amendment application, request for directions report, and rental housing demolition application report. Are there any members of the public here to speak to this matter? Seeing none. Are there members of the committee with questions of staff? Seeing none. Members to speak. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you. I will be moving the staff recommendations, which is for the city solicitor and appropriate staff to attend the planning tribunal to oppose this application in its form.
Okay. Thank you very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.15, 129 to 131 McCall Street, 292-294 Dundas Street West, and 170 St. Patrick Street. Zoning amendment application, request for directions. There is a registered speaker, George Trainee. George, welcome.
Yes, I'll make this quick. The reason I'm here is I'm a resident of Henry Street and on the board of the newly formed Baldwin Village Community Association. And because of the size of this project and the height, its effect on our neighborhood and the surrounding established neighborhoods, I'm asking that we be kept in the loop, specifically under sections 37 and the use and the need at the time to relocate the daycare in that building and during the construction of that particular process. I'd also like to emphasize that we are very concerned over the shadowing effect of such a tall building on our neighborhood. And the one addendum I like to make to the city report is under parking. The parking is residential parking can be accommodated at off-site parking locations. I don't know who wrote this. Maybe they're not aware of the present issue of the lack of parking in the hospital areas at the time. But what I'd like to have added to the city staff report is that condo owners not be allowed permanent parking. I have no problem with fewer parking spots in the building. I don't care if they have any parking spots in the building. But I would like to make sure that such a large project doesn't take up all the permit parking in a neighborhood. And I'm going to quote former Councillor Adam Vaughan, if they do not have parking, they do not have cars, they do not shop at Costco. So I would like to move that in the report that permit parking not be allowed for such a large-sized building. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Are there any questions of the speaker? Nope. Seeing none, thank you. I don't believe there are any other members of the public here for this matter. Are there members with questions of staff? No? Members to speak. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, and I'll be moving the staff recommendations, which is to oppose the application, to attend the OMB, or the Planning Tribunal, and to direct the City Solicitor to do so. Just a couple of comments, and just to clarify in response to the Deputant, two things which I think are critical. First is it's important that as part of this tribunal process that the Baldwin Village becomes a party to that, a formal party, so that some of the concerns that the city shares with Baldwin Village can be heard. So I would encourage that. The second is, as it relates to the concern related to a restriction on any potential project for the residents from having permit parking, which is a standard restriction that we place on all developments through our office. That's something that isn't included at this point in a request for directions report. Rather, if there were a settlement or if it was a final decision, it would be made at that time. And so I would just encourage you as a party, as our office would be through the city, to make sure that that is brought forward as part of the legal process. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. All those in favor? Recommendation of staff report. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.16, 139-195, McCall Street, zoning amendment application request for directions report. We have a speaker, George Trainee.
This particular site is a little closer to home. If you're not aware of the former Silverstein's bakery, this project is close to my heart. I've lived in the neighborhood for 40 years. I own a building on Baldwin Street. And what I want to make sure is that the Baldwin Street Village Community Association is not left out of the process. We have been left out of the process in the past. We want to ensure that all community members are kept aware and review all final approvals and concessions concerning Section 37 and approvals of the plan and required site plans. A major item here, not included in the city staff report, slightly outside the city's present mandate, though requires to be in the mandate, is the major item not included in this staff report that should be addressed is in parallel to this application is the proposed construction plan. Given the narrow street at this location, the multiple uses of McCall Street, the severe serving local residents, hospitals, parking, TTC streetcars, Ord Street, Children's Hospital, hospice, U of T exam centers, etc., the loading and unloading during the lengthy construction period needs to be addressed now, as the space needed should and can only be provided within the site property. I've been told that the process cannot occur until after an application is moved forward. However, the approved site plan for this development must take into account the need for on-site loading and unloading, and that at the LPAT, I will represent our neighborhood to ensure that the site plan is approved with the construction needs in place. The overall design and the site plan should and must reflect this need. Thank you very much.
And thank you for your remarks. Any questions of the speaker? Okay, thank you. Members with questions of staff? Seeing none, members to speak. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, and I'll be moving the staff recommendations, which is to oppose this application and to direct city legal staff and staff to attend the LPAT in doing so. And just building on the deputant, I would encourage the Baldwin Village Community Association to be a formal party at this. Matters related to construction and site plan are not done at this point. This is a request for directions related to legal representation, but as it relates to any potential rezoning, construction and site plan, that would take place at the next stage, and I would encourage Baldwin Village along with the city to be part of it, and that's why I'm directing staff, that's why I'm moving staff recommendations to oppose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. All those in favor of the recommendations of staff? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. We're zipping along. We can probably do maybe two more. TE 32.17, 150-158, Pearl Street and 15 Duncan Street zoning amendment application request for directions report. Are there any members of the public here to speak to this item? Seeing none. Are there any members with questions of staff? Seeing none. Members to speak. Councillor Cressy.
I'll move the staff recommendations here.
Okay. All those in, any questions of the mover? No, seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 32.18, 504 Wellington Street West, zoning amendment application, request for directions report. Any members of the public here to speak to this item? Seeing none. Members, are there any members with questions of staff? Seeing none. Members to speak. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, and this is my sixth and final request for directions. I will be moving the staff recommendations. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. We have TE 32.19, 64-66 Wellesley Street East, 552-570 Church Street and city-owned Public Lane, official plan amendment, zoning amendment, and rental housing demolition applications. Request for a directions report. We have a member of the public here to speak to the item, Ross White. Are you here? Okay, welcome. We are on item number 19 regarding 64-66 Wellesley Street East. When you're ready, Ross, you've got 5 minutes and the clock is on your left-hand side.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. I have been a tenant of 64 Wellesley for over 23 years, and earlier there were 5 of my people who live in that building who have, again, been in this building living for 25 plus years. And I'd like to just read a segment right out of your own report that this proposal, the height and massing of revised proposal do not conform with the policies of the official plan, do not fit with the existing and planned context of the Church Street Village character area, and do not adequately address the public realm, including nearby streets, parks, and open spaces. So I would encourage this committee to not go forward with this development until the developer meets the code amendment processes, the official plan, and that their proposal to change the zoning, to change the official plan, be rejected, and that they do, in fact, meet with the current regulations as written. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ross, for your remarks. Thank you. Are there members with questions? Seeing none. Members with questions of staff? Seeing none. Members to speak. I would like to move the recommendations in the staff report and to refuse the application for a number of reasons, including the reason mentioned by the speaker. This application is entirely inappropriate for this site. I believe that the advice from planning staff at the very beginning, even through the pre-application stage, was this is not a tall building site. This is too small. What you're proposing is too large, too tall, too much density, too much massing. There are a number of considerations around the loading and servicing that was going to be causing significant challenges. It would not be supported. The application came in. We are responding to it. The applicant responded with some minor revisions, but it is still too tall. Just to provide some context, it started off as a 43-story tower coming down hard at the corner of Church and Wellesley. It is now a 39-story tower coming down in Church and Wellesley, with the and also affecting 65 existing rental dwelling buildings. We're very far from a resolution, and this matter will now be, it's been appealed, and there is a pre-hearing that's now set at the new LPAT and the tribunal scheduled for May the 28th. So that's where it's heading, and City Legal and City Planning will be going to defend City Council's position. All those in favor of the recommendations in staff report? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. I would like us to conclude and break for lunch. I don't believe there's a point in starting item number 20. We will not be able to proceed and get through it. We will come back at exactly 1:30 and we'll start the meeting then. Okay. Thank you.